Here's Fred Zimmerman with another tip from a pro, part of Christmas light contractors and Christmas light installers. We're going to teach you how to hang some holiday lights on your home for either commercially or residentially. And here's your tip from a pro.
All right, this is Caitlin with Christmas light installers and Christmas light contractors, and we're going to talk to you about doing a large trunk wrap. One of the things that's most important about doing a large trunk wrap is making sure that you have multiple sources of power or connection points for your lights. Now, never try to do one of these in incandescent. You might be able to do it, but I can guarantee it's going to be a total nightmare. We are using commercial grade Minlian LEDs. They're excellent lights, they're just wonderful. And they look really beautiful as well. But the main point is that these lights can connect at least 40 end to end. You can do the math about wattage and everything, but just because it connects 40 end to end doesn't mean that that is always a good idea. You can see here we have our male end of one of our runs starting at the bottom, and we also have a three-way down here. So our three-way is connected to our power that goes to the house. Our first run connects here, and then we have another extension cord that's run up the tree. Now, what we need to do is we need to go back and kind of clean up our cords a little bit. And what is ideal is having this cord actually under your lights as you're doing the install and running the power first. So now, the reason that we do this and having multiple connection points for your runs is that occasionally you'll have your mini light strand, and you'll see on your mini lights there's like a rectangular plastic piece, and that's actually the rectifier. And so LED mini lights, they're awesome, but when you have hundreds and hundreds of lights that you install over the season, you'll probably have one or two strands that are defective. And so what will happen is a rectifier on your strand, even if it's new, might go out, and that'll cause the whole run to go out. And so now if we had connected everything end to end, one total run, if one rectifier goes out, your whole tree's out, and you have to figure out where the bad strand is in the 100 that you just installed. So when you have different runs, it's easier to narrow out your problem strand. So all of our lights came in packages, and they kind of came bunched up. So obviously you need to take your lights out of the package. But the thing is that these lights all have white tags on them on the male and the female ends. So what we always do before we start our install is we count out how many strands we're going to need, and we cut off all the white tags. Now some trees and things you can get away with leaving the white tags on, but this many lights and this many ends, you're just going to have a tacky looking tree if you don't take the time to cut the little tags off. So we cut them off, and then when you're doing the install, you're always going to be plugging the lights in as you go and then starting to wrap. So you always want your male end on the outside. That means when you're creating this ball of lights, you're going to have the female in your palm and start wrapping your lights. Now if you see this strand here, you know, if I take it right out of the bag, the lights come bunched up. And when you're up in the bucket truck trying to wrap these strands around a branch or a limb, it's quite cumbersome, and you might drop it and just becomes a mess. So it's really, when you have them in a nice ball, it's very easy to handle and just much more efficient. Now, when you're doing a large trunk wrap like this, you'll notice that there are some parts of the tree with where the angles of the limbs are. You'll find a lot of like dead space or gaps. And a lot of times when you step back, if you don't fill those gaps with lights, it's just going to look kind of not very nice. So what we do, and there might be other solutions to this, but what we personally do is, like over here was a gap, and the lights would just kind of fall down. They weren't really being secured. So what we did is we just took a stapler and we put 1 or 2 staples just to hold it up in place. That way it looks seamlessly and it looks good, and there's no blank spots or dark spots. All right, so I'd say the #1 question that we get when doing trees like this is, how many strands does a tree like that need? Now, I see questions like this all the time for pine trees, bushes, trees that you would spiral, and unfortunately, I think sometimes it just takes experience knowing how many strands it's going to need to go around. You just take some practice and you kind of just get a feel for how far a strand goes. But what I would say is you just kind of count how many limbs the tree has, how many that you need to actually wrap, which again, that's going to take some time counting all of them, and then estimating how many strands per limb that we'll need. And so for our limbs, each limb needed about 3 to 4 strands. Some of them only needed 2. And then the trunks, 1 strand for us on the trunk went from here to here. Now you can see it's not very far, so I would say if you've never bid a tree like this or estimated how many strands it would need, probably overestimate, because most likely the strands are not going to go as far as you think. Now, when we do our trunk wraps, we always keep them about a palm's width apart. You can space it out more, but again, it's not going to look as good. It's not going to give you that really bright look that you're really going for. So again, you kind of have to you have to estimate. You say, if 1 strand only goes this far on the trunk, how many is it going to take to go all the way to the top? And again, how many is it going to need to go on each limb? So it takes time, it takes practice. It's not something you're going to be able to look at necessarily and know within 30 seconds. All right, another thing to keep in mind when you're bidding trees like this is that just as much time as it takes to install, it's going to take to uninstall. So you can bid that out, include that in your price for the install, or you can add that as an additional cost for taking down the lights. But just keep that in mind, because your time is money. So this tree, we had one guy in the bucket truck ridge, and then we had somebody on the ground. He did the lower things from a ladder. But we've been here most of the day, so I can tell you, when you take it down in January, it's going to take us a while to do that as well. So another question that we get is, how do these lights do in the rain and snow and ice? The main thing is, if you're investing in commercial grade lights like these, I can't say that water and things will never be an issue, because obviously things have defects and happen, but they're way less likely to have issues with water tripping a GFI. Now, if you're trying to use LEDs from the big box stores, or even trying to do something on a smaller scale like this with incandescent, your phone will be ringing off the hook when it rains. Me and my husband did incandescent lights for several years when we started our business, and we knew every time the rain would come, our phone was going to be ringing. So switching over to LEDs has just been a game changer. Everything, not only is it easier to install, I personally think it looks much nicer, and it always has less callbacks. So this may go without saying, but it'd be near impossible to do a tree like this without something like a bucket truck or a lift. Now, this tree here is about 35 feet tall, and even with some of the angles of the limbs, you would not be able to reach with a ladder. So this homeowner wanted us to go all the way to the top and go out on all of the branches. And so using a lift or a bucket truck really was the only way that we would be able to do that. We did use like an A-frame ladder and a 30-foot or 22-foot ladder to get some of the lower limbs, but if you don't have access to a lift, I wouldn't advise trying to do a tree this tall. I have seen for shorter trunk wraps, people using A-frame ladders or things called orchard ladders. Those are things that you should look into if you're interested in doing some smaller trunk wraps.